Well, welcome. This is August 2nd, 2026. We're into August. We're going to continue with what we've been doing with the parable of the vineyard workers. I'm going to divide this into the first set of verses and the second set of verses. It's supposed to be grabbing that. Let me try something real quick here. I want to talk a little bit about models first. When you have a model, you create a model of some reality, and then you work with that model. Engineers do this a lot, scientists, and you come up with something with the model, and you come up with a new reality. So your older understanding goes to a newer understanding. Some quotes from models, one by George Box. Essentially, all models are wrong, but some are useful. The only good model, the best material model of a cat is another, preferably the same cat. In other words, whenever you make a model, there are things that don't fit well. If you want to model the world, you got to create the whole world, which we already have. So a model is going to have problems. But some models are useful. So the interesting part there is with models, unlike if you have an opinion, you can just say, I don't like the opinion. With a model, if it doesn't fit, you find a better model. You can't just find one problem with it. To quote a phrase from the 90s, if the model fits, you must acquit. You can't find it guilty. Yeah, so we have that there. Yeah. So that's what we're dealing with. And what I presented the other week is very interesting because, let me find. It's a very interesting because I had a model and it fit. Then I discovered, oh, something new, and the old model still fits, but we're going to get a new understanding on that, which is very interesting. To use that, remember Jesus uses code words for in the model. So I use a code word model. The mustard seed. The kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which is indeed the least of all seeds, but when it is grown is the greatest among herbs and become a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. You've heard that parable, right? The problem is if the literal parable doesn't always make sense, and it doesn't have to. But what happens is theologians and commentators and pastors force everything to make sense, and they'll change the translation of the Greek words. They'll omit Greek words, which we'll see, to make it make sense. Like the mustard seed is not the smallest of all seeds, but people on the internet will try to argue, yes, it is, and they'll come up with all these reasons. It's not the greatest of all herbs or leafy vegetables, and it's a bush. It's not a tree, and all people will try to force that to be true. What Jesus says is you got to put in the meanings, and then you'll find out what it really means. So, in fact, I have this. So the mustard seed, there's a play on words there, appears to represent the empire of Constantine in the Roman Empire. And that's when all the little mustard seeds, that is all the individual believers, became a huge tree. It became the Catholic Church later. And the birds came and made a home in the tree. And is it the greatest of all herbs? Well, that's the laconica, and we have the play where it's raconica. The mustard seeds are the greatest because they'll say that they say raca to the council. They don't do what the council wants if it is different than what Jesus wants. And is anyone better than anyone else according to their soul in front of Jesus? We're all the same, aren't we? Therefore, we're all the least, we're also the greatest. So it's the least because they're all the same. So we have these little ideas, and you got to realize you got to put in the meanings before you decide what it means. Because I didn't say that, that's what Jesus said, and that's how he explained them. So we're going to do that. We're in this part, making room. Matthew 19, we've covered all these parts. Rich young man, he says, sell your essential attributes. We had the division of thrones. We're going to look at the first part of the parable of vineyard workers. Now, there's a literal view, often a distractor. There are opinion views. Everyone will make up these ideas of what it means. There's the code word model. That's what Jesus says he uses. And then he uses little planned words for error detection and correction. We went through that last week with the UPC codes. It's part of computer science and information theory. If you want to detect and correct errors, you got to put some redundancy in. So we have some of that here. And so ending up what we did last time, and everyone that forsaken houses or brethren or sisters or father or mother was added, or wife or children or lands for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold, looks like 100 times of nothing, and shall inherit eternal life, everlasting life, which is the important thing. But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. It appears that many has to do with an exception for the rich young man by what he told them, but we're going to come back to that next week. We'll also find out that that verse about the houses and brethren and everything appears to fit in with the next parable, but we'll save that for next week. Let me go through the verses. These are the first 7 verses, and this follows those others. For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the 3rd hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. Again he went out about the 6th, 9th hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th he went out and found others standing idle, and said to them, Why stand ye here all day idle? They say unto him, Because no man hath hired us. He saith unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right that ye shall receive. That last part was added. It's in the other verse. So you've heard that story before, right? Some of you. What's meant by the vineyard? It never tells us whose vineyard it is. What's meant by the hours? Why does he have to say he'll give you what's right? Didn't he say he's going to give you a penny or denarius? So what I do first is I look at the English, and I look at different well, there's some logical issues here. Wonder how we can resolve those. So we have that. What are the workers? Vineyard, the denarius, and we're going to go through and look at some of that. To do that, let's jump ahead, but we actually did this a month or so ago. What think ye? That has to do with money or children. A man had 2 children. He came to the first and said, Go work in the vineyard, not my vineyard. Okay, they move these verses around. He has 2 children. Who are they? Can one be a child of the devil? Can God be the father if God only has 1 son? To avoid that, he uses the word for children. What about children? What about creations? What's the vineyard? Is there only one vineyard to go work in? Does Satan have a vineyard? Does Satan ever copy ideas? Yeah, we'll get back to that. And he came to the second and said likewise. He said, I go, sir, and went not. And we had these planned words. I am going, Lord. He doesn't say go. He says, I am the Lord. And then there's some planned words to help us. Keukapilin, keukapilin. You burn peddling. What's he peddling? Snake oil? Is he peddling, trying to get him to buy something? So we get all these little play on words. Who might benefit from this snake oil? Just the bird or the person doing it? Then we get afterwards, I wonder if he makes his own vineyard. Here another parable, similar one. A certain householder planted a vineyard, hedged it round about, digged a winepress, and built a tower. Oh, he built a tower. All these things. And the husbandman left. We have all these play on words. It starts out, akusat anthropos. Here's the way of Satan. So we're not going to go through the whole thing. We had done that. It appears Satan has a vineyard too. We got 2 vineyards. Which one are you going to work in? And he said unto them, now we go to Caesar. Whose is this image and superscription? In Greek, it's tenos diakon aufti kei epigraphi. But tenos means there are all these plain words. What sicknesses of the house you burn, epitaph. All these little hints of what he's doing. So it says the superscription, the inscription. Why do we not have the in the King James? It's because it comes from the Latin, and Latin didn't have a definite article, so we lose a lot of these when they're in the Greek because it comes from the Latin. Why do we need to say the inscription? Can't we just say inscription? Well, not if you're going to do the play on words. You need to tell a joke. Talk to those who tell jokes. Mike's, others. If you set up a joke, you got to have certain words in there. So we put the in, so you get the play on words. Otherwise, your little K for you burn doesn't work. And I've been finding these all over the place where we have the words, and why is that in there? Instead of some deep theological principle, it's you need it to make the little play on words work so you know what it means. Now, in Deuteronomy, you've probably heard about eating the clean and not eating the unclean. Of all clean birds ye shall eat. In the Septuagint, or the Greek, it's you shall eat every clean bird. The bird is ornion. We get ornithology from that. So the dinarion is the Roman coin. The two play on words are diarnion and diarnion. Almost the same in Greek. It means when you get paid a denarius, the play on word says you could get paid through a lamb, that is Jesus, or you could get paid through a bird, that is the power of Rome. Which vineyard are you going to work in? And then we saw that with Caesar. He says, give to God what's God's, to Rome what's Rome's. Well, Father, another word is Abba, and Rome is Romus. So Abba Romus is a trade-off of the Father and Rome. So Abba Romus and Abalonis is the word for vineyards. So it appears it's a hint. In the vineyards we have a choice between the Father and Rome. Which one are we going to do? And to get a little dig in, the Caesar of Caesar, it's Caesaros, Caesari, and serpents. He's relating them to serpents. Now that householder is going to be Jesus as God. It's used a number of places. They translate it using different words, master of the house. But Jesus says, if they called me the master of the house, Beelzebub, they're going to do worse to you. So it's just that it's there. What the Pharisees appear to be doing is what's called projection. They're calling Jesus what they really are. Remember the thing about the three fingers? You point at someone and the three fingers going back. So we get that. So the kingdom of heaven is like a man, a householder. Whenever he says like, omiosi, you get omia, you get a hint of Moses. The hostis means has to do with bones. Something's coming in here. Something special. The two words he uses for reward are, is that coming up? So those words appear a few times for the reward. We're going to skip those for now. So we have the vineyard. I already mentioned we have several vineyards. So we'll just go to the next one here. And Satan will copy these ideas. They agreed for these. That's called a symphonia. You ever heard that word, symphonia? A symphony orchestra, they all play together. Notice it's an M instead of an N. Sin is the word it came from. The N's and M's are closely related, like in Abalonis and Abaromus. That is Abba, Rome, and vineyards. So we talked about it. He agreed for a penny a day. Well, which is this? They all agreed for a penny. The literal view is it's 1 penny. Everyone gets the same. This view is, are you getting something through a lamb or through a bird? Now this is Jesus is God. He wants you to go into his vineyard. He saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and that's an interesting word in itself, but we'll just take that hour. The laborers are the workers, and they're idle. If we take the word for labor, ergos, which means work, we get erg in physics from that, and negate it, we get aergos, which is argos, which is the word for idle, which is interesting. He went out to the marketplace. He says, go into the vineyard. Didn't he tell the children, go and so forth? Whatever is right, I will give you. Why doesn't he say, I'll give you another penny? I'll give you a penny. Why does he say, whatever's right? And that was one of the things I wondered about. Why does he have to say, what's right, I'll give you? If he has to say, what's right, he'll give you, maybe there are two types of rights, right? In fact, whenever that word for righteousness is used, you look and say, it just means your opinion. Is it God's opinion or righteousness that I'm doing, or is it man's righteousness or opinion? Whatever's right, and why do we have two? Well, you could get paid through a lamb or through a bird. If you're going to go with in the Satan's vineyard, you'll be paid through a bird, which is not too valuable. So he says, go into the vineyard, whatever's right, I'll give you. Give you as a dose. And then some of the translations, they move a few words to the next verse. We're going to skip that. About the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing. He said, why stand you here all day idle? Oh, interesting. Oh, no one's hired us. He said, go into the vineyard. Okay. Has everyone been hired? Is there anyone who's not been hired? Does everyone get a chance? Does everyone have this chance to go to the vineyard? Very interesting. So I went through that quickly, but we were in the 1, 3, 6, 9, and 11th hours. There are some little mistranslations or not translated. He says at the beginning, my vineyard. Then he says, go into the vineyard. He always then says, go into the vineyard. Oh, if it were his vineyard, he would always say his, but you can still ignore him and go to your own, go to some other vineyard. So we have that very interesting. Go to the wrong vineyard and you may end up feeding the birds, in which case you'll be birdseed, right? Yeah, birdseed. So we need to look at this. Let's do some quotient arithmetic real quick. If I divide 11 by 7, I get a quotient of 1 and a remainder of 4, right? And in the 10-pin model, the kingdom of heaven is in the lower 7 nodes. So if we just take the 9th and 11th hour and continue, we go back to nodes 2 and 4, which is very interesting. Does everyone remember that division where you divide by a divisor, you get a quotient plus a remainder? We had that in 8th grade math class. I didn't always pay attention, but I did like to draw pictures. That's a picture of our 8th grade substitute teacher. He had all these pock marks on his face, and I never showed it to him. I thought he would be mad. But I would sit there just doing other things. So he explained that rule, and I asked very few questions in school. So I put up my hand and said, well, then how come 0 divided by 0 is not 0 with a remainder of 0? Because 0 times 0 plus 0 is 0. That's just typical questions 8th graders ask. He kind of fell to pieces, and then he came back to next class, and it didn't really have a good answer. It took 30 years for me to find out from a famous computer scientist. He explained it, but he didn't say why. And it took me another 10 years to figure out why. Why can't you divide by 0? And the simple answer is, to make math work, you can't do it. If you let it, then you get all these undefined results. So it's only to make math work. And there are all these negative numbers, imaginary. You have all these rules, and they're not there because that's just the way you do math to make it to work. But so we have that quotient and remainder. So if I do that, I map the nodes 9 and 11 into 2 and 4. This gives me an interesting connection. So we have that. I put the two trade-offs at the bottom. And if I do that, if I avoid those nodes that I mapped into, it leaves number 5, treasure in the field, living bread, and it leaves the killing node, Rome node, vineyard, as 2 vineyards. Go into the vineyard. Which one you going into? That's quite interesting. If you go into the vineyard of Jesus, the living bread, and do it there, you're going to get paid a denarius through a lamb. If you don't, then you're going to go to the wrong vineyard and you're going to get paid through a bird, which isn't worth anything. Now the interesting part is, I relate this to other things. In the parable of the virgins in Matthew 25, we have 5 do the right thing. They have the right oil. The other have snake oil. They don't have the right oil. They're in trouble. No one knows why it's 5 and 5. Well, we have 5 ways to get there, so there's one way to think of that. 5 and 5. Of course, we're all in this together, so we have all these things going on at the same time. There's all 10 of them. And so this all comes out of taking that and realize, I wonder what hour 9 and 11 are. And I had tried several things over the past year or so, and then finally it came, if I do this, everything fits. And that verse we had from before about the leaving children and so forth, that will fit into this, but we're not going to do that today. The last thing is, we have these little verses. And he went out early in the morning. There's a word amma, meaning at the same time, together with. And I'm looking at that. Why don't they translate that? It's a word. It's a Greek word. It has a meaning. It's translated together at the same time other places. That's a tip-off. There's something going on here. Every man received a penny, a denarius. They have this word ana, means up, upwards. Like you're born from above, born again, ana. And it's used in many places. It means up or upwards. Why did they not translate those 2 words? And I thought, M and N's are related. Amma, ana. What if I take them and switch them? Now, does it make sense literally? Remember, Jesus is talking. He says, a man went out together, right? Amma, early in the morning, like all you are with me. And now we get them all together. We are all together. And every man receives a penny. And he puts his hand up from above. Ana, denari. That fits the literal one. He's using these hand motions. If we switch them, then, they're going up. They're getting up in the morning. But the interesting one is, if I make ana 1 penny, amma, M and N's are closely related, you're going to get all together a penny, a denarius. You're going to get altogether something from the lamb or altogether something from the bird. Remember those 10 virgins? If we skip the talents, we get to the sheep and goats. You've heard of the sheep and goats, right? What happens to the sheep? They get their reward altogether through a lamb. What happens to the goats with the bad logic? They get their reward altogether from a bird, and it's not worth anything. And so they're in trouble. So it's interesting that as the model gets refined, I see more and more connections. And this explains things. I mean, why did they skip those words? And I'm finding other places I'm going, they skipped these words. They didn't translate them. They have meanings, but they're not the meanings they were looking for. So I find that very interesting. Let me finish up. So next week, we're going to finish the parable. Let me just read the verses so we have the complete. You got the idea going out these different hours. So when evening was come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, call the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. And when they that came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. But when the first came, they supposed they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny. This is where, remember, Peter says, what is in it for us? This goes back to that, And when they had received it, they murmured against the good man of the house, and saying, these last have wrought but 1 hour, and hast made them equal to us, which have borne the burden in the heat of the day. But he answered one of them. I wonder if that's Peter, right? He answered one of them. Friend, comrade, I do thee no wrong. Didst thou not agree with me for a penny? Take that as thine and go thy way. I will give unto the last even as to thee. Is it not lawful or allowed for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good? Remember, you're thinking everyone gets the same penny. Looks like there are two different types of pennies, which explains if you go work in the wrong vineyard, you might get the wrong type of penny. So the last shall be first and the first last. For many, and this was added, it doesn't fit in. Many be called, few chosen. Just as a thought question, I asked AI, Copilot, from where in the Bible does the idea of a deathbed conversion come? And it says, another example, and they get this from the internet, is the parable of the vineyard workers, where laborers hired late in the day received the same reward as those worked all day, illustrating that God's grace is not limited by the length of one's prior life of unbelief, from answerthebible.com. Think about it. How valid is this literal interpretation that contains many assumptions based on opinion? So we don't know the answer to that question, but it does appear, as you might think, there are two types of rewards, and if you go work in the wrong one, if you're primarily for God, but you have to put up with Rome, you're probably good. If you go with Rome and just put up with some things from God, you're probably not good. So there we have the two vineyards and where that comes from, the parable of the vineyard workers. So we'll continue next week and finish this up with some connections on first and last and some